This is the day of a clear victory from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like 45 days ago, when this ummah was blessed with a big victory in Syria without the much effort that we have thought are needed. 11 days and this brutal regime in Syria is gone. And in this case today, for the last 8-9 months, and this is according to President Biden, he said this is the same agreement that I tried to do in May. But the time has come and the Zionists have caved in. I said this is a day of the days of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because wallahi, this a victory can only come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we can understand from what happened in Syria and what happened in Palestine, this matter of aqidah. وَمَا النَّصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. Nasr only can come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Can we come with a number? How many people expected the victory in Syria 45 days ago? How many people, governments, analysis, expected this victory to the people of Gaza? Null. I haven't heard any person before our brothers in Syria got to Damascus that this can happen and will happen in few days. Similarly, with what had happened in Gaza, how could this happen? I mean, those who have seen today the streets of Gaza full of the fighters of Al-Qassam, full all over the place, with full arms, with uniform. Looks like they did not go through a war in the last 471 days. Don't forget that today at 8:30 was supposed to be the start of the ceasefire. But the Zionists continue bombing because they said we did not get the names of the 3 Israeli hostages that would be released. So they kept bombing until Hamas sent the 3 names. And then they stopped. And suddenly the streets of Gaza are full of people celebrating. Yes, the price no doubt was very high. But don't let the munafiqeen and their media in the Middle East tell you otherwise. One person whose father is a shaheed and his 3 brothers and their wives and some of their children are shaheed. He said, don't let anybody tell you not to celebrate. This is one of the days of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the ummah ought to appreciate and thank Allah and praise Him and humble ourselves, as was said in Syria, in front of this great victory. Why it's a great victory? Because on October 7, what had happened? An army collapsed in front of few hundred well-disciplined men coming from Gaza, the largest prison in the world. Few hundred men came, took over 3 military bases, 27 military points, wiped out or took to Gaza so many soldiers, policemen, and went all the way, reached Asqalan. 6 hours, 6 hours, they were in the surroundings of Gaza without much resistance. Without much resistance. And as I said before, those mujahideen did not kill civilians. Yes, civilians came from Gaza because the doors were open of this prison, and some of them were looking for some booties and engaged some of the civilians and killed them. And then we had the big lies starting by few extremist liars within the Zionist entity, that babies were this done to them and women this done to them. It got to the point that the President of the United States repeat those lies before the American media clearly said it did not happen. So this first stage of putting an image to the world of barbarianism, that those are barbarian, it did not stick because it was a big lie. And then the Israeli army came and the helicopters came and they start killing their own. This is admitted by this Israeli media. So that was a victory of 1 hour that no one could have imagined that it could take place with that scale. And what had happened? The Zionist government put 3 main goals: that we will get all our hostages back, we will finish Hamas, we will have Gaza de-radicalized and under control, so nothing could happen or come from Gaza. And for the last 471 days, they kept repeating, we will not accept anything less. And now they accepted much less. None of their objectives were achieved. I'm not sure if you have seen it, but basically the Israeli government met to discuss this ceasefire and voted 24-8 because they had no choice, and I'll talk about this later, but to approve it. And they were crying, men and women, after the meeting crying, some of them putting their head to the wall and crying, some of them leaving the meeting and crying. How could this happen? How in the world could this thing happen? One of the most advanced technological country in the world, best American weaponry, best European weaponry. Yes, they have a smaller army of about 100,000, but they get the reserve, so they had more than 300,000. And according to them, Hamas have anywhere, and the other mujahideen, between 40 and 60 or 70,000. So basically, the defense minister said, those human animals. We will not have food, we will not have medicine, we will not have fuel, we will not have this or that delivered to Gaza. Yes, this said in the front of the whole world, and there was not much of a response. But what we have is something from the pages of the life of the Sahaba. Something from the pages of the life of the Muslims who got victory in the Battle of Hattin against the Crusaders and liberated Bayt al-Maqdis. Something from the pages of the Ummah when it fought at Tatar. And we can go on and on and on. This is a unique situation. This is a victory for every child in Gaza, for every man and woman in Gaza, for every member of this Ummah who have sent money to the needy people of Gaza, who went in a demonstration at a university or downtown for the sake of Gaza, who put statement on social media and spread the words about Gaza. This is also a victory for all the free world. The millions upon millions of people who went to the streets in the US, in the universities. Many of them are Jews against Zionism. Europe. It's a victory for everyone who have done something. And if someone did not really pay attention, did not do much, or not even make dua, I'm not sure what to say, at a loss of words. What is ironic, and this is another sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala how we measure things. It was clear in May when Biden tried his best to get a ceasefire, and Netanyahu really maneuver and outmaneuver him, and things did not go through. We discussed it then and said Netanyahu will be waiting for Trump. And he did not hide that he wants Trump to be the president. Netanyahu did not hide it. I want Trump. And he would give all indication. The Zionists in the US wanted Trump, although many Jews did not vote for Trump. But the Zionists, based on what he did in the first term, of moving the embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing Jerusalem as the eternal capital of Israel, and giving the Golan Heights to the Israelis. Of course, he got $100 million by this gambling guy, Adelson, who have died since then. One of those Zionists who have asked for these. And although the US government, Republican and Democrat, one after another, they refused to do these things, Trump have done them. So Netanyahu, Ibn Gfir, and Smotrich, believe it or not, there are boards, advertising boards in Palestine that has Smotrich on one side, Ibn Gfir on the other side, and Trump in the middle. They thought he will just open the door wide for us. We can annex the West Bank. We can increase the amount of weapons that we throw on Gaza. The bombing can increase. And we can even limit more the food and the fuel and the water to Gaza. They put all their hopes in Trump. And what happened? And what happened? Trump comes and says the war in Lebanon needs to be stopped. Hezbollah got the orders from Tehran, from Iran, stop the war. Although they have said that we will never have a ceasefire until there's a ceasefire in Gaza. They lost a lot. They lost a lot. But the war stopped. Netanyahu could not stand for Trump because he knows Israel is worthless without the USA. Israel cannot stand on its own. Its money, its weapons, its political cover, and we can go on, is in Washington, D.C. But Biden chose not to face Netanyahu. This war could have stopped in February of last year if Biden told Netanyahu, stop the war in public, and we will not allow this war to continue. There's no doubt in my mind that if he put his foot in, that this thing would have taken place. Yes, he will try to get to the Congress, and he will try to get others outside, and the deep state, the think tanks, what have you. But at the end, if the US president wants something, it will be done in Palestine. Because they are the one who financing. And here we come. Not just Trump stopped the war in Lebanon. He said, before I get to the office, I want this war in Gaza to stop. He's getting to the office tomorrow. And today is the first release of 3 Israeli hostages and 95 Palestinian prisoners. How can we understand this part other than this is Allah? لله الأمر من قبل ومن بعد ويومئذ يفرح المؤمنون بنصر الله. To Allah is the matter before and after, and on that day the believers will rejoice in happiness. How? How could this thing happen when this man that, everyone who knew what he had done in the first, but there were other elements that played into this. The first element is that Trump take things personal. So he had an issue with Netanyahu. He was angry at Netanyahu. And he did not hide it. When Time magazine asked him a few weeks ago, do you trust Netanyahu? He said, I don't trust anybody. They are not asking you about anybody. They are asking you about, do you trust Netanyahu? He said, I don't trust anybody. And he retweet things that really blast Netanyahu. Why? Because 4 years ago, Trump stood and says the election was stolen from me by Biden. And guess who is the first who runs to call Biden and congratulate him? The munafiq, Netanyahu. Because now we have a new president. He thought that, yes, he's elected, so, the king is dead, long live the king. And subhanAllah, that was a big one. Because this man keep grudges, no doubt. The second aspect is also personal. And you can see it in his tweets. He is really making fun of the weakness of Biden. He says clearly, Biden was there all along. He did not do it. He could not do it. I did it even before I get to the White House. He's weak. Remember that Biden and the Justice Department went after Trump. They get him to the court and they indict him. And during the election, Trump promised that he will get back at those people. He will get back at them. So for him, it's personal. It's this arrogance. I am the strong leader. I am the one who stopped the war. I'm the one who was getting the hostages out. I am the one who tell Netanyahu what to do. Netanyahu has no choice because it was the stick behind him. He could not challenge Trump because he knows the consequences. The government will go. Trump will start attacking him in public, and there will be chaos within the political establishment. There's no doubt. There's no doubt that this is Allah's making. And the third aspect of of Trump with this issue is that more than once he said, the Jews did not vote for me. The Jews did not vote for me. He said, after all what I have done to the Jews, they do not appreciate what I have done. But the most important aspect for him is this part. I am the strong leader. I can get things done. And he cannot be challenged by Netanyahu and by his gang. That's why you could see ministers around Netanyahu saying, we have no choice but to accept the agreement. Why? What do you mean you have no choice? You have this 300,000 soldiers. And you have been bragging all along that victory, you are doing victory in Gaza, you killed this and you did this and you maimed this and you bombed this and you bombed this. And so what has happened? Well, it became clear now for those who keep asking who is in charge, the US president or the Israeli prime minister. It was Obama's statement one day when Netanyahu was talking to him from above. And Netanyahu was saying, I was not sure who's in charge, me or him. You are talking to the President of the United States and he's talking to Obama as if he's talking to a child. But now the arrogance of Netanyahu is met with the super arrogance of Donald Trump. And he cannot stand it. He cannot stand and face the music. I mean, nothing have changed with Hamas. Nothing have changed with the people of Gaza, except more and more suffering. Nothing have changed with the Arab countries. America and Israel told Qatar in the old days to open an office for Hamas. This is not analysis. This is a statement came from the Qatar embassy in DC. When the Zionists in America attacked Qatar and saying that Qatar support Hamas and they have an office for Taliban, an office for Hamas, the embassy, the Qatar embassy in DC issued a statement, some of you have seen it, saying basically it was the American government and the Israeli government that asked us to open an office for Hamas so they can communicate to them through Qatar. Same thing with the Taliban. It was the US government that asked Qatar open an office for Hamas. You see, there are certain organizations that to the US they are dirty. We cannot touch them. We cannot talk to them. But we need a puppet that can do this service. And Qatar was the choice. But at one point, 2 months ago or so, or I should say maybe 3 months ago, the US and Israel asked Qatar, close Hamas office and get the Hamasis out of the country. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They have no choice but to say, yes, sir, because what is Qatar? You know, without the Turkish tanks, Saudi and UAE would have ate them. You know the story. We have discussed it before. So now Trump comes. He's not the president, he just was elected. And he told Qatar, bring Hamas back. Yes, sir, bring Hamas back. So Trump brought Hamas back leadership to where? To Qatar to negotiate. And then Trump did not send a diplomat for this mission. He sent a New York Jew who is a real estate developer. He's not a politician. So he went to Qatar, got things done on that side, and then called and said, I would need to meet Netanyahu on Saturday at noon. Of course, Netanyahu does not have the guts to tell him, I cannot see you. So he asked his office, the Prime Minister office, to tell Trump's guy, it's the Sabbath. And Netanyahu does not meet on the Sabbath. Although everybody knows Netanyahu is secular, he have nothing to do with the Sabbath, he have no respect for the Sabbath or for any other thing. What did the guy said? He cursed the Sabbath. I mean, this is a Jew. This is a Jew. So he cursed the Sabbath. He said, I want to see you tomorrow. And F the Sabbath. That's what he said. And Netanyahu got himself, carried himself, and came to the office. He said, sign. Sign. Because he have the stick of Trump. I mean, how many times did the Blinken go to Palestine? How many times? So that's how the agreement materialized. And basically, Hamas got all what it asked for the last year, except for one thing, that the Israelis did not declare end of war from now. This is a matter that will be discussed in the second stage. The first stage is 42 days. In the 42 days, we have seen 95 people being released today. And for every, this is for 3 people, they release 95. And down the road, they have 750 people. Many of them are there for a long term. Some of them are there for 100 years. Some of them are supposed to be there for 200, 300. Depends how many lifetime that they got. Yeah, believe it or not, there are some who were sentenced to 300 and 400 years. I think one of them even was sent to a few thousand years. So now, all along, the Israelis said, we will not release people who have blood on their hands. They are releasing hundreds of them. And someone now comes and says, you know, why do you call this a victory? It's not less than a great, great victory. I mean, you just need to look at what is happening among the Zionists. They're crying. The leadership is crying. Ibn Ghafir called this a strategic defeat. We were defeated and resigned. He left the government. He was in charge of the prisons. He's the one who decided to give the prisoners a small meal, 1 meal a day, small one. And that's why some of them lost 50 pounds and 60 pounds who have been there only for a few months. He was put in charge of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa's doors. Alhamdulillah, he's gone. Smotrich, he said, I am not the one who will quit in the middle of the war. So he will stick with the government. He said, if we do not reoccupy all of Gaza, I will leave the government and bring it down. we will have a coup and bring the government down. They are mad. They are very upset. I mean, even the guy who came with the general plan say, boycott and don't send food or supplies. North Gaza, we need to just get the people out of North Gaza and just bomb it and bomb it and bomb it until they come out of the tunnels or nobody is left. He is saying today, we lost the war. There's no doubt. I mean, this thing did not happen in the history of this Zionist entity. A war for 470 days and they come defeated. And it's not me who's saying it. But let's see, when we look at this ummah, who is happy and rejoicing and who is crying and very sad. We mentioned the Zionists. There's a saying in Arabic, the dead person or the deceased is in Tel Aviv. And the wailing and the crying is in Cairo and Abu Dhabi and Amman. What does that mean? It means that the actual loss, the people who are supposed to be, sad for the loss, are the Zionists. But look at the people who are associated with the governments in Abu Dhabi, UAE, in Cairo. Look at those governments in Jordan. And worse, in the Palestinian Authority al-Muqata'a. I mean, they are wailing as if they have lost. And one of them, I mean, try to find a name, a label to put on him. Habash, who was the person in charge of Awqaf, Islamic Trust in Palestine. He come without any shame with an interview and says this agreement between Hamas and Israel is not worth the ink that was used to write it. That this is really very weak. It should not have been there. What? The whole ummah is rejoicing. The people of Gaza are dancing in the streets. Qassam Brigade is parading in Gaza with large numbers. Just 2 hours after the ceasefire is declared, you look in the streets of Gaza, other than the buildings that are destroyed, it has been as if nothing have changed. And this jerk is saying, this agreement is not worth the ink. Well, I suspect this evening, at 1 o'clock in the morning, they released the 95 Palestinian prisoners, the women and the youth, aged 12 and 13 and 14, and so on and so forth. I would imagine some of them, meaning the Palestinian Authority leadership, will have heart attacks seeing this. I mean, that's their nightmare. People in surrounding the buses, all of them carrying flags of Hamas in the West Bank. I only saw one Palestinian flag on top of the bus, but many of the flags on the buses and around are Hamas. After all what was done. So basically, they are more and more irrelevant. Yes, the deceased is in Tel Aviv, and the wailing and the crying is in Cairo and Abu Dhabi and Riyadh and in the Palestinian Muqata'a. Make no mistake, they are sad. Now, why do I say this? First of all, I said many, like Abdul Khaliq Abdullah, this guy with the usual speak for Ibn Zayed and company and others. Those are the same 4 Arab leaders who told Blinken, we have advised Netanyahu all along not to trust Hamas or support Hamas, but he did not listen. And the four of them said, well, now he has to finish Hamas. I mean, imagine. Crown Prince in Saudi, the ruler of Abu Dhabi, the ruler of Jordan, King Abdullah. I mean, how in the world we got to the point where Sisi and Ibn Salman and Ibn Zayed and Abdullah, the same advice to Blinken, finish Hamas. Netanyahu has to finish Hamas. This is in the book War. We have covered the book War in details. Abbas Kamel, the head of the intelligence, or lack of it, I guess, in Egypt, he's removed now. He told Blinken, let me tell you this advice. The tunnels are too deep, so the Israelis should not go in the tunnels. Allahu Akbar. He's giving his brothers the advice. He said the tunnels are too deep, I know them. Tell the Israelis not to go in the tunnels. Wait until Hamas comes and chop their head. That's the language. Chop their head. May Allah chop the heads of the munafiqeen and zalimeen. Allahumma ameen. So that's the reality of what had happened in the past few months that led to what is happening today. Now, where this will go, it's complicated. Because we have seen, Iran and the militias in Iraq and Hezbollah really stopping in the middle of the road and leaving Hamas to itself and Islamic Jihad to itself. But at the same time, we have seen the people of Yemen, the government of Yemen, despite the attacks, severe attacks on Yemen, that they stayed with the resistance until today. In fact, when the Israelis violated and start in the last few days, after the agreement, in the last 2 days, they kept bombing, and the Yemenis sent their missile, which again, in the middle of Tel Aviv. What to do with those people? I mean, Saudi has brought Yemen to the Stone Age. They have been bombing them for 7 years. They are out of that war. So really, what is it that you're going to do with them? So this remains an issue for the Israelis. Now, in terms of the new factor that is there, which is Syria, we have seen the Israelis bombing Syria for no reason, taking more lands of Syria for no reason, other than for Netanyahu to come and says, we did it. He went and stood on a mountain and said, we did it. Because he could not claim victory in Gaza, despite all the killings. Mustafa al-Barghouthi, a well-respected Palestinian politician today, he said 87 tons, 87,000 tons of weapons were thrown on Gaza. Coming from where? From, of course, the US and Europe. And he said about 170,000 Gazans were either killed, shaheeds, inshallah, wala nuzaki Allah ahada, maimed, under the rubble missing, 170,000. So the price definitely was high in this regard. But he could not claim victory, so he said in Syria, there's nobody facing him in Syria, Syria would need to start from under the scratch, from below zero. So he kept bombing Netanyahu, the equipment, the former Syrian army equipment all over Syria, and telling the Israelis, we did it. We bombed them. They have no army. They have no armor. They have no this. They have no this. We did it. Why? Again, he could not claim any victory in Gaza, so he would need to say something in this regard. As far as the West Bank, of course, the implication will be also major. The Palestinian Authority have bombed and killed people in Jenin. The Palestinian Authority, not just the Zionists. They have reached an agreement. But the resistance in Jenin said that they violated it. And now, with many of members of Fatah group, coming out of prison, because many of those who are coming out of prisons are not Hamas, are not Islamic Jihad. Many of them are Fatah people. Fatah people means those are Abbas people. I mean, imagine they are coming out of prison and there's zero effort by Fatah to get them out. Zero effort by Abbas to get them out. Who brought them out of the prison? Just like Shalit before, it was the effort of Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza. And the zero effort from Abbas and his people. So the political implication will be major in this regard. Smotrich and Ibn Ghaffir were hoping to annex the West Bank and make the West Bank an integral part of Israel. Now those plans are in limbo in this regard because they thought that they can from day one start implementing them with the support and the backing of Trump. Well, Ibn Ghaffir have resigned. Smotrich is saying basically, I'm gonna wait. If we do not resume the war and reoccupy the whole of Gaza, I will bring the government down. Ibn Ghaffir has only 6 seats, and the government has 68 at this point. So 6 seats, you cannot bring the government down. But Smotrich and Ibn Ghaffir together have 14 seats. Easily they can bring the government down. So there are good news on both sides in this regard for the West Bank. Now, would Trump follow on this and come up with a political solution saying basically to Netanyahu, we need to have a political solution for this issue of Palestine? And that is a possibility. I would say, a few months ago, this was far-fetched. But now this is a possibility that he will carry on with this. Now, how about the consequences for the internal politics of Israel? There's no doubt that the people who say what was achieved, the buildings in Gaza destroyed, more than 75% according to the UN, and many people are killed and shaheed. What was achieved? We are back to October 7. Absolutely not. The image of the Zionist entity in Palestine around the world is an outcast. They used to speak to the world that we are the most moral army. We are the only democracy in the Middle East. We are this, we are this, we are this. All of this is baloney. Their leadership has been indicted by the International Criminal Court for genocide. And Netanyahu will need the help of Trump to get him off the hook. Because only the US, Congress have put some restriction on the judges of the ICC. But they need someone like Trump to come and get him out of this mess. And Trump may use this card to get him again with the stick moving. Blinken said last week that Hamas have recruited the same number of people that they have lost. So basically, they are at their strength in the beginning of this episode from October 7. All the plans of the settlers for this colonial settler entity to take over Gaza for now have evaporated. There were more than one conference, and some of you have seen it. They were dividing Gaza between them. Somebody said, I would need to build my house here. I would need to build my house here. They were dividing it between them. It got to that point. In fact, discipline within the Israeli army became so low that civilians started going into Gaza. And even in Lebanon, many of you seen have this scholar, Jewish scholar, who was taken without permission with the army and he was killed by Hezbollah. There was an outrage. How could the civilian go? And then the army started the investigation. So the morale of the army is down to the ground. The army was making videos destroying Gaza. And now there's a group called Hind Rajab. Hind Rajab is a girl that the Israeli army killed her and all her family. Hind Rajab group now is around the world going after Israeli soldiers. And they have the videos saying basically they committed genocide. We saw the last episode in Brazil when one Israeli soldier went on vacation and the Hind Rajab group went to the court and asked for his arrest. They said, we have the evidence that he committed genocide. And before his arrest, he fled to Argentina. And Argentina, of course, have this Jewish president and they send him back to Israel. Until now, the bulk of the airlines have boycotted Tel Aviv. American Airlines have said they will resume service to Tel Aviv in October 2025. Delta and United, they also delayed. They changed the law to give them breaks, but still, they're not going back. So it'll be a while. Their economy is in shambles. Their debt skyrocketed. Moody and other organizations have lowered their scales when it comes to where do they stand, so that when they get loans and this and that, they will get favorable interest rate and so on and so forth. And Moody and Standard & Poor's and others have lowered it. Startup drastically went down. They said 30% of the population, the Jewish population in Israel, live in poverty. Many people left the country. Those are statistics from the government. They left the country. And many of them did not come back. And in fact, one of the professors at the university there warned that many professionals, IT people, doctors, engineers, researchers, scientists, they went to Europe and they left their jobs. The struggle between the religious and the secular is much worse than before October 7th. How long this Netanyahu can survive and how long this lies and deception to the world can go on. I mean, imagine in the last 9 months or so, Biden, Blinken, and Netanyahu were saying the same thing. Hamas is the obstacle to a ceasefire agreement. For the past 9 months, Biden, Blinken, and Netanyahu, the same thing. Guess what? Ibn Ghafir came 2 weeks ago when there was this proposed ceasefire. He said, I am the one who stopped all the previous attempt to make a ceasefire. I'm the one who stopped it. What? I mean, they're three big liars. And that's why the Prime Minister office issued a statement saying, no, it was Hamas. I mean, the guy said, I am the one. Ibn Ghafir said, I am the one who stopped the ceasefires from taking place. And everyone knows this. Because it was clear, whenever there's a talk of a ceasefire, Ibn Ghafir Smotrich saying, absolutely not. No way, Jose. We will not do that. We have to continue the war. But the lies are there. I mean, how long can Netanyahu keep lying to the world? How long? So there is no doubt that the society is fragmented, that there are many issues, many challenges that are there and will be coming. And as this ceasefire first stage finished, while they are discussing the second stage, because remember, in the first stage, Hamas will release the women and the elderly. And the male soldiers will be kept for the second stage. They will not release them until the war comes to a clear end. And as I said, this is a total, clear victory. Nasr mubin, Fath mubin, clear victory. And all those who say otherwise, they do not want any khair for the people of Palestine or for this ummah. I will, inshallah, stop here. If there's a question or a comment, I'll take it before we conclude, inshallah. Any question or comment? Okay, inshallah, we will see you, inshallah, next Sunday. And we will go to our original topic, understanding the Middle East, the role of Turkey, Iran, and Israel. As you can see, there's not an Arab country in the list because they have no much of a role or an influence.